Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining here tonight or today, depending on which time zone you are. My name is Alejandro Sanchez. I will be your host in this meeting. Um, Please call me Alex. I will be reading here the Zoom notifications in case you have any comment, suggestion, opinion. Today, this panel will be tech lag in LATAM and possible solutions. Everything about this panel will be uh, telling you through my experiences and through what I've seen and lived. Also, this will be focused a little bit on healthcare because I'm biomedical engineer, so I will be focused on healthcare. So we will begin. Let's start mention first that I'm from Mexico, from Latin America, this region called LATAM, or also known as Mexican countries. This region, it's full of opportunities for everyone. This is a place for people to start entrepreneurships or to begin a startup. This place has tons and tons of problems, and I will address some of them and how to possible solution, how to create a solution for these problems I will mention. So it will begin 3 years ago. I was a field service engineer for a company called Boston Scientific. I, I had to work to do preventive and corrective maintenance for these devices. I was specialized and trained in some of them in cardiology, urology, and I went to United States to get training. So here is where I found the first characteristic and the first difference between US and Mexico. In US, they have one engineer for each 4 hospitals, 5 or 6, depending on which devices they are dealing. Some of them are more complex and some other are more simpler, but there are 5 hospitals per engineer. This allows them to give a better quality of their jobs, and they can put all their efforts into repair those devices because at the end, those devices goes to a person. In Mexico, we are only 6 engineers for the whole country. That means we have a ton of work to do. And you may think, well, that's only for Boston Scientific problems, right? Well, actually, it's not. After talking with some other field service engineer, other brands, other medical devices, you may find that this is a general problem in Mexico in this healthcare ecosystem. Also, you may think, well, that's only a Mexican problem. Well, actually not, because they call us from Jamaica and from Argentina just to go there and help them solve this same problem. Boston Scientific had ton and ton of hundreds of devices that we must fix. And my dear fellows that still working in there in the field have this problem. In Jamaica and Argentina, it's the same. So if you are out there as an entrepreneur, here is a way to innovate and help them solve that problem. Um, they still, you may think, well, they should hire just more people, right? It's an obvious choice. But companies do not spend time in engineers because they have to be trained. They have to be taught how to manipulate these devices, and sometimes it took so long and too much time, and then after that engineers just quit. So it's too much effort for companies, because if you are in Mexico, they have to send you back to San Francisco just to get trained, or another station near your country to get training in these devices for you to quit in 1 or 2 years. It's not worth for them. So I had to visit the whole country. I would say I had to travel from 99 states, 99% of the states here in Mexico. There are 32, and I visit all of them. I I was in hospitals, and here's a story about how I travel. I had to be at the airport 3 a.m. in the morning and then to catch a flight at 5 in the morning. My plane arrives there in time at around 8. So I have to be at the hospital 9, fix the devices and pray to be out there by 4 so I can grab some food and go back at the same flight at 7 p.m. So I am arriving my hometown here in Mexico City around 1 in the morning. And the next flight it's 3 in the morning. So I just have to 2 hours in between flights to catch a breath and some food and some sleep. Of course, was tedious, exhausting, and some engineers had health problems. So I was one of those engineers sitting over there sleeping because this happened to me twice or thrice a week. And it's part of the job, I know, but some engineers has had some hard time. On the line, as I was telling you, I had to travel through all these hospitals all around Mexico. Uh, I know all hospitals, 99% of them. I know from the receptionist to the nurse, to the doctors, to the engineers, all the personnel inside. I grew a network in there. And I want you, please, in the Zoom, I want you guys to comment or to add, what do you think the Mexican healthcare ecosystem is lacking? Of course, focusing in tech. What do you think it's lacking? I made this question in other panels, and many people said medical devices. And this is a tricky question because it's not the solution. We have plenty of medical devices. Well, let's say enough medical devices for treating the illness, for treating all the all the sick people. But the problem in medical healthcare is this one. These pictures, I took them from hospitals all around Mexico. And yeah, that's infrastructure. When I was in service, I have to put medical devices into these lockets, into these connectors right there. And that's not the way it's supposed to be because we have the technology, we have the medical devices just to treat the patient. And I would like you to focus on this picture here on the top in your screen on the left side on the top. You may think, well, that's a common room that could actually help patients. It's not that dirty, but there is a square, a gray square on the bottom on the floor. That gray square, it's the sewage. So meanwhile, the patient is being on a chirurgical process, the sewage is running right there, right next to him. I don't think that's appropriate. And no, I know there are laws in Mexico, United States, in Europe, Asia. There are so many rules, NFPA 99, there are rules, FDA. But here in Mexico, we have this issue of infrastructure that hospitals do not take care of it. And the big problem is that they have to shut down the whole area for redoing these places. They have to invest money, time, and also patients cannot get in and get attention. This is a huge problem right now because many patients get treated there. I don't know if many die. I don't have those data, but those patients are in danger. I know there are some electrical security, but this doesn't look electricity for me. So let me give you an example for you to understand a little bit how it's the Mexican healthcare working. Everybody have seen TVs, right? Everybody have seen TVs. This is an old TV. You need an infrastructure of 3 cables, the ABC cables, the yellow, the white one, and the red one, just to play some images in the TV. That TV requires electricity and that cable, and that's analog TV. So now we buy this pretty TV, this HD TV, this 4K, whatever TV brand you like. And that TV, we hook that into the infrastructure of this old TV. Of course, the image will not be clear at all. It will lack of resolution. So we can have all these pretty devices for treating hospitals, for treating illness in Mexico, but we still have the infrastructure problem. Here's another problem I realized we had in Mexico: paperwork. Many of you have heard that United States have problems with paperwork. Mexico has problems with paperwork. But it was really funny and frustrating at that moment. I was in a hospital in Guadalajara. If you don't know Guadalajara, please type it on Google. It's a nice place to go. Plenty of tequila. You may enjoy it. And I was working on this hospital and in this on one of these rooms. This is an hemodynamic room. For for the people who have been in those rooms, you may notice that you have no signal at all, no internet connection, no data, mobile data connection, and it's freezing cold. For those who have been not as a patient, of course, in with other purposes, it's pretty complicated working there. So I was working in there, and after finished, Boston Scientific gave us a tablet for have the work order and deliver them to the hospital and the provider of what we did to the device. And we sent it via email. But when I finished the job, when I was done, I told the guy in charge, hey, I'm done. I have the work order here with me. I will send it to you via email once I have signal. The guy said, no, you cannot leave this room until you give me the work order on paper, printed and signed by you and your superior. And I was like, dude, that's not even possible because I have to catch a flight just to get his signature. Um, I was 1 hour flight from where my superior was. So he called security on me. Like I was kind of a bad guy if I was stealing something. I have 5 cops around me just because I couldn't give them the work order printed and signed. And I felt frustrated at that moment because I didn't have a notebook at all. I couldn't make a one handmade work order. So they have to escort me out to the hospital just to wait for me to hook my cell phone into my tablet and send them the work order. They receive the work order, and after that they print it and I have to sign it. I wasted 2 hours on that back and forward progress in that discussion, and also I lost my flight. So this is another problem of infrastructure and the personnel inside. They have the old costs, the old ideas of paperwork and hard work. Another problem, when I was a field service engineer, I was waiting for me in a hospital. I was waiting for the personnel in charge to give me the device and start working. And I start looking around. I look at the beds, I look at the patients, I look at the nurses going back and forth. They were busy, they were in a hurry. And suddenly I figured out that they don't have these devices, these fancy devices for calling the nurse, this patient communication device between nurses and patients. So I asked the nurse, she was running by, and I stopped her and I said, hey, give me a second. She said, yeah, what's going on? If you don't have these communication devices between nurses and patients, how do you attend the patients? How do you know in which order or how do you attend them? And she said, the loudest, we attend those patients. That was shocking because in many hospitals all around the world, you may see in movies even these fancy devices. And here, if you are not the loudest, you don't get attention. And what happened with the patients that are in bed and with a serious illness in their hands or their legs and cannot scream? Even if they have the device, they could not ever call the nurse. So that was the point of me when I say, hey, let's do something about this problem. So me, two co-founders and me start this startup called Blanket, and we went through many accelerator process, many congress. I don't know if you can see it here. I will share my screen again. So we went through all these accelerator process, and now we have our startup in Mexico, United States, and Hong Kong. So this is a problem that just by looking, just by staring 5 minutes in the room, in the healthcare hospital, that it's happening to people, that they are suffering because they have an illness, they have a broken arm, whatever, but they don't have the way to call the attention. Another problem we are dealing, it's this one, the information problem. I know there's there's too much information all around in Mexico, United States, US, but for example, here in Mexico, we have a change.org for no 5G in Mexico. They don't want 5G in Mexico. It's like if we will go back in time 20 years and ask them if they want internet, and they say no. Of course, that is a problem of too many information. We have internet now. We can look and say, hey, I have headache, and Google may say, oh, you have cancer, when you only have headache. So they are burning antennas, and it was a news all around the world. Also, they are drinking chlorine, and they are putting all other substances that the World Health Organization say, hey, 5G do not spread COVID, or hey, do not drink chlorine because it's bad for your health. And that information, that fake news, it's spreading all around the world, and it's affecting us. So what I'm saying you in this panel, that solutions for these problems in Mexico ecosystem, in Mexico healthcare, already exist in many parts of the world. I know in United States, Japan, all those places, these solutions of infrastructure already exist. But we don't have those. We have the fancy MRI, we have the fancy X-ray, but we don't have a way to connect it safely for patients. And that's what I'm saying, that it's an opportunity for startups to think a way of how to improve those old infrastructure into new infrastructure with low amount of money or time. And that will help a lot to hospitals, because we are now with an overflow of people. We cannot shut down areas. And now with coronavirus times, it's even harder. So I think Latin America can take a huge leap into modern healthcare just by changing infrastructure. Entrepreneurs can think of innovations in this area. I know many other areas, just like telecommunications, um, transportation requires help and has a tech lag also. But I, I just mentioned through all this panel that healthcare problems can be addressed just by changing the infrastructure. It's not, it's a way to say, hey, this is how you can improve things. So here's my LinkedIn and here's my email. You can find, if you can find problems, I know it's cool to create arms and big robots for any problems, but it's fancy. But there are problems that's still there that has already been solved in other places. My name is Alejandro. Call me Alex. That's my email and that's my LinkedIn. If you guys have any question at all, any comments, suggestions, you can write me. That's also my LinkedIn. Please let me know. Here, I think you can open your mics for saying any question at all. I will be here around another 5 minutes. If you have any questions, you can type it if you don't want to speak. Here, I will have my open mic.
Hi, good night. My name is Gabriela. Hi.
Hi.
I do have a question.
Yeah, sure.
You talk about infrastructure, then it's lacking in the hospitals. I know in Mexico we have public hospitals, then the government runs, and we have private hospitals. So I would like to believe that the private hospitals, they have all that infrastructure taken care of, because you pay a lot of money when you go to those hospitals. But unfortunately in Mexico, there's a very small percentage of Mexicans, they can afford to pay for a private hospital. Most of us, we have to go to the public health in Mexico. So if I have some ideas to improve this infrastructure, how difficult do you think will be to deal with the government to get the permits or go through all the bureaucracy to get the job done? Because even if you have a great idea, how you can get it into the health system and the public hospitals in Mexico? What do you think about that?
That's a good question. Here in Mexico, government takes a long time to solve those problems. Mexican healthcare ecosystem takes so long to improve things. Yeah, private hospitals do have the infrastructure correct, and they don't have these kind of things or connectors, devices, as I showed in the pictures. What I tell as a solution for that, it's first to get approval of FDA, because here in Mexico we are next to US, and they really care about FDA approvals, and COFEPRIS, it's the Mexican FDA. So if you get FDA, you can get COFEPRIS, that it's the Mexican FDA, easily. So it won't took you too much time. I think the longest time it will be FDA. After that, you just have to get into some of litigations process in the government. The government in Mexico posts some open jobs for startups or companies to get into and to participate and try to improve those things. But if you don't have FDA or COFEPRIS, I mean, both preference, but if you don't have any of that, you cannot get into it. And that's good, because that's regulations, that is how it's supposed to be. But now if we go to hospitals, we can find these kind of things. And I don't think that's good, but it's how it works. So in case you ever want to improve those hospitals, first we have to get FDA approval, then COFEPRIS, and then we have to start going into that process of start improving hospitals.
Okay, well, thank you. I was just wondering. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other question?
It's more the problem of architecture or the budget.
It's kind of both. It's a good question. It's kind of both because some devices have to go into the wall. Some of them have to be changed by electricity since the pole outside or the cables underground. So they have to shut down the whole area. As I was saying, they have to close the whole chirurgical room just to get into the infrastructure, to get into the wall with a hammer, with heavy duty tools just to get into the wall and change those cables, change those wires. So it's part of architecture, and it's part of budget, because if they shut down the area, they don't have patients. If they don't have patients, they don't have money. And also, over that, on top of that, they have to spend money. That's when they don't want to do anything. And that's why, for example, I will tell the example of my company, Blanket, of my startup. We don't actually get into infrastructure. We made devices plug and play, just to go into the electrical locket and just connect it, and it works. Because the devices that already exist, you have to go into the wall and put wiring and all that stuff. That's why many hospitals do not have these communication devices. Yeah. It's an architecture problem, but if you, as an entrepreneur, as a change maker, you create those devices to change infrastructure without going into the wall, then you have a business. Then you have a solution for that problem.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other question? If not, I will leave you here my LinkedIn and my email in case you ever want to give me some feedback or comments, suggestions, or connect. It's fine. Thank you for being here. Thank you Global Unite on Conference for having me here. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.